Quick update on Kerwin Roach. He sees a doctor later this week, and he'll get another x-ray on his hand, just kind of check on the progress of where he is. But for right now, he's not been cleared to practice or play. So we'll be without him for the short term, and then just kind of go by how things go with his doctor's appointment.
Questions? In terms of this shortened 7-man rotation that you're kind of stuck using until Kerwin gets back, do you think that's going to wear on guys as the season kind of progresses, since you don't really know when Kerwin's going to be able to get back?
Well, I mean, guys are playing heavy minutes. I think it's important for us. You know, you're in such a competitive league, and these games are so close. You want to do your absolute best to try to go win that game. At the same time, as you mentioned, over the course of the season, it's a lot of demand to put on, you know, a smaller number of guys. So, you know, you want to find ways to play more guys. We have obviously a couple other scholarship guys that we can play. And then, you know, you got to be really creative with the rests and the way that you're handling them in practice and the way you're going about things. But you know, fortunately, these guys are used to playing. They're resilient, and you know, they're excited about getting out and playing.
I mean, on the other hand, you know, it seems like the increased run has really helped guys like Jericho and Jace. Are you seeing that? Do you like the response that they're showing to that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, those guys are making progress. You know, Jace was slowed a little bit. He turned his ankle in practice a couple days before we played Oklahoma State, so he wasn't quite himself in that game. But I think, you know, in general, our young guys with the increased experience that they've had, not just those two, all of them, they're getting better, you know, and that's what you want from freshmen. They're making strides. It never happens as fast as you want it to, particularly when you're depending on those guys as much as we are. But I do think they're much further along than they were, you know, maybe 5-8 games ago.
Is James just not earned playing time?
He hasn't. He's got to do more in practice from the standpoint of, you know, putting his body on plays and giving max effort all the time. Just a consistent level of focus. You know, he's a great kid, and he's someone that's shown in the past, you know, he can help us, but he's got to go earn it.
Did you leave Stillwater feeling like you let one get away Saturday?
Well, you always do anytime you lose a game that, you know, where you had a lead. You know, so it's not just about that game, but I think anytime you find yourself in that situation, I think there's probably coaches across this league because of so many close games that have felt that way, you know, over these past couple of weeks. But yeah, there's no question we were up, you know, 12 points or so, 11, 12 points with 6 minutes left, and down the stretch you got to execute better. Oklahoma State's a team that really, their offense is predicated on transition. We allowed them to get out in transition a few times that they did a great job turning into baskets, and then down the stretch we didn't get it done.
I know a lot of people are going to focus on the closing sequence and all that, but really the last 5 minutes. I mean, how much do you explain to the guys that doesn't come down to the final basket? It's all these other things that add up to that.
Yeah, I mean, every basket counts for 2 points or 3 points. Every free throw counts for 1 point. And when you are in a possession game, a 1-point game, every one of those matters, whether it's a missed free throw or, you know, fouling a guy to give him an and one as opposed to just 2 points. But yeah, no question. I think, you know, we can dissect that 6-minute game. And, you know, we talk about with the guys all the time the 3 keys to the 6-minute game being solid on defense, take care of the basketball, make your free throws. And, you know, obviously we didn't do any of those 3 things at a level high enough. And we still were within 1 point. You know, I think it starts with Matt. He's got to be able to play with more poise, and I know he can, and he will. He's a guy that, you know, as I mentioned with our freshman, he's still learning. He's still, you know, this is a heck of a league for a freshman point guard to have his introduction, you know, but it's at the same time it's exciting, you know, and he really stepped forward in that TCU game, and I thought played a huge, huge role in winning us the game. So sometimes with freshmen there's some inconsistency there. He had a great game last week, and he had a not so good game. And now he's got to try to make the great games more consistent.
Dylan's obviously capable of contributing around the perimeter with his skill set, but
Yeah.
the TCU game in overtime, it kind of changed the game when he got down inside more. Do y'all need to make it more of a point to, when you see man-to-man, just get him the ball on the block?
Yeah, that's a big driver for us, Dustin. The challenge with that is depending on who else you have in the game, teams may or may not have to guard those guys. So, for instance, when we have that bigger lineup in, they're going to be sitting in his lap, if not double and triple teaming him with Mo and Jericho's men, in which case we tell him, hey, get it up on the glass and go rebound it. But no question, I think, particularly when he's in there at the 4, that's a time where we tried in that game, the TCU game, to just keep going to him and going to him. We're running the same play over and over again, and I think, again, particularly when he's at that 4 spot, it's a great time to get him the ball inside.
From your games and from what we've seen in the other Big 12 games, do you just expect it's going to be close almost every time out?
Well, I think, you have to expect a high level of competitiveness on the part of the other team. Our guys have done a really good job of being highly competitive, and fighting from the opening minute until the final buzzer. But I think, one of the things we learned in the Oklahoma State game, or we're reminded of, is being highly competitive is not enough. You have to also have a level of poise. And again, we learned that in both games. That won us the game on last Wednesday and lost us the game against Oklahoma State. So no question, every game in our league, for the most part, or 90% of them, have been very, very close. And, I think the teams that can bring a high level of competitive spirit, whether it's at home or on the road, they give themselves the best chance. If a team doesn't, then you really, really put yourself in a tough position in terms of trying to win a game.
What's your impressions of Tech? What you saw on tape?
I think Coach Beard's doing a terrific job with them. They've got a really experienced group, but they've mixed in some new guys. Actually, both of their freshmen are guys we recruited that are really good players. But it starts with their older guys. They have a great group of guys that are veterans that have been there, that have won some games and been through a lot of experiences. And he's got them really bought into playing as a team. If you look at their statistics, I believe they only have 2 guys in double figures scoring-wise, with Keenan Evans being, obviously by far their best scorer. But they've got a lot of really good players that are bought in right now that are scoring 5, 6, 7, 8 points. They're capable of doing more than that on any given night. So that's the first impression, along with what he's got them doing on defense. They really have bought into playing phenomenal team defense, extremely aggressive. That West Virginia game that they played on Saturday was an absolute bloodbath, with those 2 teams, being probably 1 and 2 in the league, not only in the turnovers they force, the points they score off turnovers, but also just the physicality with which they play. And, of course, it came down to the wire.
Is Eric's week, the last week, is it just knock on wood, don't talk about it, just let sleeping dogs lie, or kind of a thing?
Well, you are talking about it.
Right. But clearly, he stepped it up a big time notch. But
Yeah.
how much is that? Can he keep it going?
Well, we all know he's capable.
Right.
We've known this. I don't think there's been any games this year or last year where he played well,
Right.
where we said, wow, I didn't realize he was capable of that.
Right.
He
is capable.
He's
Yeah.
very, very capable. I think for him, starting with the TCU game, I think he realized, and we had conversation about it, that we really, really needed him to step forward. Herrick's a feel-good guy. He's a guy that, if it was up to me to orchestrate things, if I had this within my power, he'd go in, he'd hit a quick 3, he'd get a layup, make a couple free throws, and then you could count on him to play really, really well, the rest of the game. But, to his credit, he's done a nice job in a few of our games. Obviously, in Oklahoma State, he was better in the first half because he got a hit pointer during the game, and it kind of slowed him. But he's done a good job in a lot of our games of after kind of a slow start, being better. And whether he starts really well or whether he doesn't start well, we need him to be a source of a few things for us. Scoring, just calming us down and having a level of poise with our team, because right now with not having Andrew and not having Snoop, those guys were playmakers for us that made things a lot easier for Matt, even though Matt has been the primary point guard all year. So the next logical guy for that is Eric. And then, actually on the defensive end, not having Andrew and Snoop, those guys are long, athletic defenders. I thought Eric, for most of the game, did a nice job on Jeff Carroll, who's a really, really good player from Oklahoma State. So, again, it's something he's capable of. He can do it. It's almost like getting him to understand, hey, you can do it. We need you to do it. We feel good about you doing it. And hopefully he'll continue to grow with just this maturation process of understanding that he's the one that's got to be, the impetus behind how he plays.
Looking at attacking the depth and experience for a coach only in his second season, that's got to be probably, from the outside looking in, an ideal situation. I mean, how much does that go into having so much success so early on in his time at Tech?
Yeah, I mean, coaches always talk about getting older and being older. And, when I first got here, we had an older team, and there's something to be said for having guys, whether they played for another coach or not, guys that have been in college and have, winning experience or have experience in the Big 12, going through the twists and the turns. And, they had last year a really good group of juniors that you knew this year were going to, be a special team. And then they've done a good job as a coaching staff adding to that. So they've got a good blend. They had at least one guy sitting out last year. That's a really, really good player for them now. But yeah, I mean, if you look around college basketball, the teams that have older, experienced guys, they tend to be more consistent. They tend to be tougher. And when you combine that with the buy-in that they've created, it doesn't just happen. I think Coach Beard and his staff, they deserve a lot of credit for the way that they've gotten those guys to sacrifice, because there's a lot of guys on that team that could say, hey, I need more shots, or I need more of this or that playing time. And he's really, gotten them to buy into winning and team and what goes into it.
Matt is obviously growing up playing point guard, the toughest league in the country.
Yeah.
But it seems like in Big 12 play, y'all go as he goes offensively.
We do. Yeah.
How do you balance allowing him to play with the freedom and his natural gifts, and at the same time, at times, taking the ball out of his hand and saying, hey, we got to do this organization-wise? Yeah,
Dustin, it's a fine line between those things. And, unfortunately, we're on the wrong side of that line in the latter part of the Oklahoma State game, because the reality is on some of those plays, we had a play call that we made that we were trying to get into, but Matt was being pressured so much that he went to go make a play. And earlier this year, at certain times, even earlier in that game, and certainly this will happen much, much more throughout his career, he will turn those situations, or has turned those situations, into really good shots for us, whether it's him shooting or finding someone else. Wasn't able to do that down the stretch, and that was a big part of the end result. But the point you make about taking the ball out of his hands, sometimes he needs that. He's not a robot. He can't do it all himself. When Andrew went down with his wrist injury, before any of this, stuff that unfortunately has happened lately, that was the first thing that we realized was like how impactful Andrew was. Helping Matt and being able to take Matt out of the game sometimes, and Andrew, steady the ship, and even when they were in together. So, now with him and Snoop not being out there, Snoop for the time being, Eric's really the next most logical guy. But he's, again, you want him to score, because you need that from him. So we need Dylan, to help us handle the ball some as well. And then just depending on how the game is, using Eric and JY.
This big picture-wise, I mean, this season clearly has not gone the way you thought it was going to be, with what happened the last 2 weeks and all that. But Tech's not going to feel sorry for you. West Virginia's not going to feel sorry for you. We've talked before about mental toughness. The guys need mental toughness.
Yeah.
Rolling with 4 freshmen in the lineup. I mean, just big picture, where are y'all sitting right now as with this thing progresses forward?
Well, there was a really good player at the University of Florida. He was there before I got there, but there was this kind of saying in the program that he had popularized, and he used to say, "We all we got." And the point was, you know, the guys you got on your team, like this is, and I'm not just talking about players, I'm talking about coaches, everyone. You know, you'll be connected around a common cause, and as you said, nobody in college basketball, particularly in this league, is feeling sorry for anyone, any opponent. Winning is too valuable, and it's too hard for anyone, you know, to let down. But the reality is, you know, we've got a lot of guys on our team that are healthy and playing, that have done a lot of good things this year. To win, I think to win against really good teams in this league, you're going to have right now with, you know, with the guys we have out, you're going to have the majority of our guys play well, you know, on a given night. And that's what we had against TCU. You know, if you look at it, Jericho played well. Jace, you know, gave us 8 early points, and JY scored 8 points in 9 minutes, and of course Matt and Mo and Dylan. So, I mean, those guys, they all played well, and even then it took double overtime, and we won by 1 point. So, when you're down a couple guys, that's what it's got to be. But it's, you know, that being said, we're right there to win on Saturday, even, you know, with the struggles down the stretch.
Right.
And, you know, I think one thing our team's done well all year, knock on wood, is we put ourselves in position down the stretch, you know, whether we ended up winning the game or not. Some of those games we've ended up winning. Some of them we've ended up losing. Right. You know, as a coach or a player, you tend to focus on the close losses, you know, the Duke game, the Saturday's game. But there's some we've pulled out too, you know, Iowa State, TCU, so VCU. What we've got to do is we really got to work on continuing to get better in the last 6-8 minutes of the game, whether we're playing with a lead or the score's neck and neck or we're a little bit behind, because we're going to be in those kind of games.
What have you seen from the 3 big lineup now that you've been able to use it some more? I mean, I saw you tinkered with Jericho at the top of his zone and gave a different look there.
It's complicated because there's certain things, like if you take, Dustin, specific components of the game, it's like, wow, it's a no-brainer. Let's get those guys out there, like offensive rebounding. Those guys are great, you know, offensive rebounding. But then there's certain other things that go into getting a good shot that aren't as good. You know, for instance, some of Dylan's advantages as a player are negated a little bit when you move him from the 4 to the 3. Not that he can't be effective there, he can. Same thing for Mo. Mo's right now not in the exact same way as Jarrett, but similar to Jarrett. More comfortable and more effective as a 5 than as a 4, particularly if he's playing with a 4-man that can shoot and stretch the floor like Dylan. Jericho for sure. Defensively, I think they've been pretty good. I think they've done a really good job. Jericho and Dylan have typically guarded like the 3-man, or some of these teams play 4 perimeter guys. Tech will. So they both got to guard perimeter-based guys when we've got 3 bigs in the lineup. I think they've done a pretty good job. Wednesday will be a real test for that because Tech's a motion team. They do a really good job moving around, and sometimes they'll go ultra small and you know, have 4, even 5 guards in the game.
You're looking at Mo shooting threes, and I think he only had 4 on Saturday. Are you comfortable with him taking that shot no matter what?
Well, you know, he made a big one earlier in the half. As you mentioned, he took 4. We don't want him to take many more than that. Again, and this goes along with your question, Dustin, when we're playing with those 3 bigs in the game, a lot of times that's what teams are going to give up. You know, they're going to leave him wide open at the top of the key. And so the question as a coach or as, you know, as players out on the court is that the best shot we can get in this possession? Sometimes the answer is yes. You know, he's a guy that, you know, we always talk about this. We're going to turn on the TV in about 3-4 years and see him just raining threes. You know, he's going to be a really good shooter. He is. He's gotten better even in the course of his time here. He's just not ready to be a 40, you know, plus % three-point shooter. But, you know, he's not that far away, and when he shoots it the right way, it really looks good. So the answer to your question is, in a given game, do we want him to shoot 4? You know, probably not quite that many, but it doesn't always work that way of like predetermining exactly how many he's going to shoot. It may be, hey, we run an action, we're trying to get the ball to Dylan down low, he's up high, there's less than 10 seconds on the clock, the ball gets thrown back to him. Yeah, he probably should shoot. You know, we don't want a shot clock violation in that situation. But I know this, you know, he's got to continue to get his butt in here and work on that shot, because that's the best way to be effective when you take it. And his work ethic's been good. But if teams are going to give you that shot, and they will, he's got to have the ability to knock it down and really practice that.
Three last ones.
How much has the loss of Snoop and Andrew hurt the ability to get out in transition and even to use some of the full court pressure?
Yeah, I mean, those are our two most athletic guards, perimeter guys. And, you know, to answer the second part of your question, it's tough right now to extend the floor full court a lot with you know, the number of guys that we're playing, and Snoop was such a big key to that. Andrew was as well. You know, hopefully when we get Snoop back, we can go back to more of that. In terms of get out in transition, those guys, Andrew's, you know, as good a guard as I've coached in terms of finishing and transition and getting out and scoring. So just in terms of the back end of it, those guys are good at putting the ball in the basket and making the right play. But we can still get out and run. Again, the question is, you know, when guys get fatigued, particularly the second half of the game, we still have to have a dedication and a willingness to do what goes into scoring a transition, which starts with just running. And then the fine line, if you have a lead like we did the other day, is, you know, how much do you force in transition as opposed to slowing it down and working the clock. But I feel like our team, you know, with or without, you know, Snoop, obviously Andrew won't be coming back to our team this year. We do need baskets in transition. We need to get out, throw the ball ahead, and attack. And it's also a way to get the ball to our bigs.
Coach, how much, if any, have you had a chance to visit with Andrew either after Wednesday's game or after Saturday's? And if so, how's?
Yeah, I try to go see him every day. You know, I don't want to, you know, comment too much on him, again, just to respect the privacy of his family. But I enjoy getting a chance to see him, and you know, he's got an incredible spirit, and he's a guy that is a great fighter, and it really provides a sense of perspective and understanding for me. So, you know, today when we get done with practice this afternoon, I'll go over there and, you know, just want to, as we've mentioned many times, be a support system as much as we can be for his family.
What has it meant to see the support that's been shown since that website was set up just a few days ago?
Well, again, we talked about this after the game, just level of support that people have provided. It just says a lot about Texas and about UT and about how much people care about the student athletes that make this place, you know, athletically what it is. So I really appreciate the fact that you know, people care so much that they've reached out, and I know people will continue to do so, because this is a long-term fight, and you know, I know it's a daily battle for Andrew, but people being behind him and supporting him, even if it's from afar, I know that means a lot.